Hello, my loves, and welcome back again. Today's episode is all about the power of authenticity that no one ever talks about, which just kind of blows my mind a little bit. And as we go along, we'll also kind of talk about the process of authenticity because I really feel like a big part of what I know I've experienced in the last couple of weeks and in conversations and in some of my own internal purging and rearranging and all kinds of stuff going on, but also definitely just from what I have observed very intimately and deeply and very broadly over the last, I mean, at least couple of decades for sure, if not longer, is that authenticity seems to be like a real hang up for people. It can be this real big challenge. It feels, I think, for a lot of people like something that they're constantly striving towards, and yet a lot of people never fully achieve or receive or get to. And what I notice, um, from hi, my puppy's here and he's sniffing around. Do you wanna come sit by me? I mean, to be fair, I'm kind of sitting on his spot right now. No? Okay, alright. Um, so a big part of what I feel like I have, again, not only experienced myself, but noticed as a theme in these situations across the board is that it's really tough, and I feel like it's gotten even tougher with the rise of technology, social media. In a way, we are more connected than we've ever been, and yet we are more disconnected than we've ever been. And especially because of all of these things that take up so much of our time and our energy, as much as we allow them to, right? The more that we put our time and our energy into, our phones, our games, our social media, our TV, all of these things, right? The less connected we become with ourselves. And in fact, the more disconnected we become with ourselves, right? And so I feel like this is not only one of the many bases for why authenticity can be such a struggle, but also because um, we have grown to be a society, especially in American society, where we are so in our heads. We're so in our heads about everything all of the time. And I feel like a lot of what we're doing when we're on social media, especially sometimes when we're watching TV as well, but like we're really searching for that inspiration. We're looking for something that brings like a deep meaning and a deep message that resonates deep with our heart and our soul. And and we're looking, I think, non-consciously for something that will help us to kind of get out of our heads and more into that deep feeling of like, yes, I can do this. Yes, this is me. Yes, this is something I want to strive for. And I think that sometimes one of the problems that we encounter because we have so many different social media platforms and because there are billions of people on social media is that we become inundated, right? We become so overwhelmed. Like, I think that it's great that we can use different kinds of social media and technology as a tool for connections and for maybe helping us to connect more deeply with those parts of ourselves that strive for some deeper meaning in this life. But I feel like a big problem is that we are using that as a tool to find something that actually exists within ourselves. We're looking for it to exist outside of ourselves, right? We're looking for something within ourselves, but we're looking outside of ourselves. And I think that's a big reason why we become so easily inundated and overwhelmed because there are so many things. There are so many people and there are so many creators and so many people who are creating such a variety of things that I think all of this art and beauty and music and all these different things, right? Like they resonate with us on different meaningful levels. And so that makes us feel like we want to go do all of those things. Like we find meaning in receiving the beauty of all of those things. And that makes us feel like in order to be meaningful, like we have to go out and do all of those things, right? And so to find this level of true authenticity within ourselves has just become harder and harder over time instead of easier and easier, right? I think that um again, it's just not that technology or social media is inherently bad. I think it's all about the way that we use it. But I think, again, too, you know, those two things very much go hand in hand, right? Like we will use it to feed the parts of ourselves that that we're actually working on and actually growing, and the parts of ourselves we're working on growing in order to bear some kind of a fruit at some point along the line, right? When we become more authentic with ourselves, and we'll become more authentic with ourselves when we also figure out which parts of ourselves we really need to be putting more of our time and attention and intention and energy into, right? And so, in the midst of all this going on, there's so much going on in our external world that creates more going on within our internal world. And it keeps us, unfortunately, for a lot of us, what it does is it necessarily almost kind of keeps us in a little bit of like a hamster wheel a little bit, right? Because like we're so busy thinking about so many things and thinking about creating so many different things that it's hard for us to deeply connect in a very true sense of who am I really? And what do I really feel like is my purpose? What do I really truly desire in my heart of hearts to accomplish or create today, this week, this month, this season that I'm in right now, this year, this lifetime, right? It's like, again, unfortunately, we become, I think, a little bit too connected to too many things and not connected enough to the true essence of who we really are. And it creates just so much distraction. And then on top of it, we additionally find ourselves not really ever taking any action or a whole lot of action in any direction, or we take too much action in too many directions. I know that has been my that's been my biggest problem is I try to do too many things at once. But I know for a lot of people that kind of inundation and overwhelm leads to them just like deciding that they're going to do nothing. And a big part of that is not only do we have like all this information coming in from all these different sources outside of ourselves, right? But we also have all this programming and conditioning and all of these different um I want to say pieces of information, but not truths, right? These different communications that we've received about who we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to live our lives, how we're supposed to move through each kind of different season of our lives, right? Like we keep getting fed all this information, and we all know that a lot of this information too has been things that we've received earlier on. It's things that we were told or communicated with in some kind of verbal or nonverbal way of like, no, don't do that, do this. No, don't be that, be this, right? It's these, and so we have all these programs and conditionings, and now we have all this information flooding us from social media, right? And it's like all these things that just, um, like I made a post on TikTok earlier this morning, and um, I was trying to figure out a way that I could do it, but I didn't. I wound up not doing it. But I was talking about how, we see so many of these I know for me at least, it's been a post and a reel, and I've seen it so many different ways, but it's this quote that, like, maybe your journey isn't so much about becoming anything, maybe it's more about unbecoming everything you thought you had to be, right? And I think that there's definitely a validation to that. It's definitely headed in the right direction, but I think because of all of these things that have distracted us and conditioned us and programmed us, right? What our journey is really about is think about like the way that like a rose or a lotus or a peony, right? Think about the way that these flowers, when they originally kind of bud up, they're like this ball of really tightly concentrated petals all folded over each other. And what I feel like our journey really is about the unfolding, right? It's really about opening up all of these layers of ourselves in order to reveal who we truly are, in order to get at that authenticity. And we'll know that we've hit that authenticity when we feel that we have found that place of conviction, right? We're no longer looking for inspiration outside of ourselves. We're no longer looking for validation outside of ourselves. We are just like, yep, I have found the core of what makes me me on a soul level in my heart of hearts. This is who I am. This is what I stand for. These are the hills that I will die on. And so, this is how I'm going to direct the energy of my life's work, right? Of what I'm here to do, which, by the way, is always more than just one thing. It's multiple things, right? I feel like that's been a real kind of misnomer. Um, you know, that's been more popular over the last, I don't know, several decades probably, is this whole idea of like your life's purpose, as if there's only one purpose. But there's always multiple purposes, right? Like I am absolutely super passionate. Like my life's work in terms of my business is coaching people and guiding them on their journey, and um, helping them to go through this process of peeling off those layers of distractions and conditions and programming, and helping them to get at the essence of who they truly are. But I'm also a dog mom. I'm also a wife. I'm also kind of like the keeper of the home in a way. My husband and I definitely have this very like divine masculine, divine feminine relationship and partnership that we live by every single day. And so, we have our different roles and our different purposes that we fulfill in life from one season to another constantly. And those are constantly shifting and moving and changing, just like anything else, just like our balance, what brings us joy and happiness, what makes us feel fulfilled, right? All of these things. But when we can find that core true essence of who we are, we can stay true to that, and we can continue to move through our lives in the different stages of our lives with that same energy, with that same intention, with that same deep connection to who we truly are and how we're going to do things, how we're going to change from one season to another, how we're going to approach every situation and every aspect of life as much as we possibly can, right? Because we're human and we're not perfect. But, by any means, and things happen. But keeping that perspective again gives us that conviction. It gives us that guiding light. It gives us that North Star to be like, okay, this is who I am. And so this is how I'm going to move through life. But I think a big part of what people often miss is that journey of unfolding. I think a lot of people, they almost try to like force their way in to confidence. They try to force their way into conviction, and they're missing the part where that confidence and conviction naturally come as a product of reaching your level of true authenticity, right? And so we have to know that getting at that, because it's an unfolding, that journey of growth, that journey of upwards movement, of elevation, even you could say of moving towards a level of enlightenment, it is first and foremost a, a destructive sort of process, right? We have to unfold. We have to get really vulnerable with ourselves. We have to look at those layers and how those layers got there in the first place before we can start the process of peeling them off. And so that is a really uncomfortable thing. But here's again, I think, where people, they try to force things, or now a lot of people do, they kind of take it in a roundabout way where they're like, oh, if I just do all of my affirmations and my meditations and my manifestations. Oh, Leo, he dropped his ball and he just got slobber all over me. Oh, um, they think if they just do all of those, love and light things, then, they just they'll they'll be able to just go in that positive direction and ignore, like, the fact that there's shadows that are existing in the background, that, they'll just be able to ignore their darkness, and that's just not true. It's just, I mean, you can do that for a while, but you will not be able to do that for very long, let alone to do it forever, you know, because at some point, what's going to happen when you try to force or when you just try to manifest, like if you are taking any of these roads where you are ignoring your layers, where you're ignoring your shadows, I guess if you want to call them that, right? If you are trying to take any of these roads where you're just trying to have that upward movement without looking at those things, you're only going to make it so far, because at some point you are going to hit a wall, right? At some point, you are going to try to convince yourself of something that your body does not believe is true. And so that new belief that you want to have will not be able to sink in and be true for you until you get rid of the old belief that is blocking its path and currently sitting in its rightful seat. Right? Every one of your beliefs right now is sitting in its own little throne deep in your sacral chakra. And if you want to be able to implant new beliefs in those chairs, you have to tell the queen that's currently sitting in them to get the fuck up and leave. You have to be able to get really deep down in your nitty gritty and to be vulnerable with yourself in that way in order to find that true level of authenticity and be like, wait a minute, I had no idea that I was holding on to this belief. It doesn't belong there. And just to be super accepting and super neutral about it. That's the real kind of goal of this process, and one of the most powerful parts of this process is that, you know, I think what's really hard for people, they in this process of being super vulnerable, is they know that when they are looking at those layers, they're looking at those old memories, those traumas, those old programs and conditions and the places where they came from, right? It is really uncomfortable because we feel so charged up about it, right? We feel so like it just gets us all buzzing, and we can feel ourselves clenching our jaws, we can feel our tailbones tightening, we can feel our stomachs churning, we can feel our shoulders going up, right? We can feel how charged up we get. And so we don't want to do that, and so we just ignore it and pretend like it doesn't exist. But if you want to be able to get the Joker out of the Queen's chair, then you have to be able to neutralize that energy, be vulnerable with it. And one of the most powerful practices that I started for myself, and now I share with my clients all the time, and I've been doing this for well over a decade. It's played a huge, huge role in my growth and elevation in every single area of my life and my ability to manifest later on, is um, the Zen Buddhist way of doing it, which is when you notice this painful memory, this trauma, whatever it is, when you notice it coming up and it's really uncomfortable, visualize it in your heart as if it is a crying baby, right? And if you are ultimately piloting your own ship, you are the mother of your life, then you also have to be the mother of that painful experience. You need to, in your mind, in your heart, you need to hold that crying baby and say, "Hey, what is going on? What's happening right now? Why are you crying? Why are you so upset? Why do you feel so much pain right now?" Right? That ability to give those darker, painful parts of your life the love that they deserve, right? And in so doing, you give yourself the love that you deserve, the love that you need in order to create safety where it did not previously exist because of your programs. Right? You need to be able to neutralize that energy, to hold that crying baby, to listen to the lesson that it is trying to give you. And then once it tells you, right, if you just ask, "Hey, what's going on?" It will tell you what's going on. The crying stops. The energy neutralizes, it's no longer charged. And then you're able to look at that and say, "Okay, well, what if we do this instead?" Or, you know, just even having the sheer recognition of like, okay, but that happened already. We no longer need to keep crying about it. That happened 10 years ago, right? In human time, as we've experienced it, it's already done. We don't need to keep crying about it. We don't need to worry that it's going to happen again. We've already learned what we needed to learn, and now we're going to move forward, right? And it's this 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 herein lies the process, the most powerful, potent process of authenticity, because this is where the duality of light and shadows becomes the non duality. This is where we come to that place where we see, oh, I have both of these parts, and I would not know that this is light or this is dark if I didn't have the dark or the light, right? You wouldn't know which is which if you didn't have something to compare it to. So they only live together in that sort of state of comparison, right? But one is not just one, it's both, right? We have these all of these different things within us, all these different parts of ourselves, and that phrase like coming home to yourself is really realizing that what we had previously seen as the duality is actually the non-duality, and putting those pieces of ourselves back together again in a way that makes sense for the truths of your soul, for who you really are, right? And so in this process, we go through not only this transmutation, but we go through this great purging as well, where we are getting rid of things that no longer make sense for us and replacing them with things that do make sense for us. And I want to tell you that if you thought that, you know, your process or your journey of growth, of upwards elevation, of manifestation, of enlightenment, of whatever it is, if you thought like, okay, I have this goal, and when I reach this goal, that's when I'll know that I have, reached the pinnacle of my enlightenment or my manifestation or whatever, just know that that's not true. Because we can never really fully escape this cycle once we've started it. And that's okay, because what happens is we replace bad problems with better problems, right? And we replace solutions with better solutions. And so everything keeps getting better, it keeps getting easier, it keeps getting lighter, because it keeps getting more and more true for us. We never ever reach a perfect balance, we never reach absolute enlightenment, and we never reach absolute 1000% truth. We only become less wrong. We only become more aligned. We only become more balanced, right? Because we are constantly moving. We're constantly growing and elevating. And so when we get on this really intentional cycle, then as we go along, we start to realize, oh, like that, You know, that group of people that I used to really love that helped me so much during this time period when I really needed them, I've grown a lot in the last 2 years, and I just kind of feel like I don't really resonate with them anymore. I don't feel like I resonate with the message that they're continuing to share. I kind of feel like I've risen above that, and it just no longer fits my current needs for my continued ongoing growth and elevation, right? And to be just super accepting of that, again, very vulnerable, very neutral, very kind of, um, loving of that is the absolute best way that we can continue to stay in that alignment with our authenticity and to never lose that core grain of who we actually are, right? And I just want to remind you real quick that when you go through this process and in every time you go through this process, as much as it continues to get lighter and easier and more favorable for you, right? Um, and as you continue to grow through these things above and beyond just this place where you feel like you are getting your head above water, but to the place where you are actually standing on top of the mountain looking down on the water, right? You'll still have these little, like I said, these little parts of yourself where you're like, okay, well, that worked for me then. It doesn't work for me now. Like, that's okay, right? Um, but I really want you to keep in mind as you go along that no matter where you're at in your process, if you know that you are not your body, you are not your mind, you're not your traumas, you're not your painful memories or past experiences, you are not even your processes, right? What you truly are is love. What you truly are is your soul, right? And so, what you really truly are is consciousness embodied, consciousness manifested, and that loving, perfect, beautiful consciousness that desires to express itself as you. And so, everything that you do in love for yourself and for everyone else is what you do in authenticity, right? So that means that if you've had any preconceived notions that to be truly authentic or to be truly confident or to be truly comfortable in your skin is some kind of egoic thing, it is not. This is not about ego. And I think that sometimes that can be really misconceived because we come across people in our lives, sometimes in our daily lives, and whether you really know that person or whether you've just, walked past them at the grocery store, whatever it is, we see these people who are really confident, and often we feel that energy from a distance, right? And so we go like, oh, like they're just so full of themselves, right? When in fact, the truth is that when you just get really authentic, really vulnerable, really super comfortable in your skin, and you have that authenticity and that confidence and that conviction in who you are, it simply strengthens your aura as a natural byproduct, right? It strengthens your aura, it strengthens the power and the level of the frequency, the vibration that you put out to the world, right? And so it's not that every time you walk past somebody who's confident that you just, oh, they're so full of themselves, right? It's just that their aura is so powerful because of the work that they've done. Bless me. And that is actually a really great thing. And it's something that I want you to know and for you to practice and for you to really get to and embody, because in physics, they would call that the law of sympathetic resonance, right? The more authentic you become, the more powerful the frequency that you emit, right? Then the more that other people and other situations and other things that are vibrating on the same frequency will be attracted to that. You can look this up. This is what they call it in physics. In spiritual terms, they call this the law of attraction. This is how it really works, right? You get super true with who you are expressing yourself as, how you are expressing your divine love and creation and consciousness, and literally the universe responds. Other people respond. Other situations respond. Other things that you desire to have respond, right? Your authenticity is felt by the entire universe, and the universe responds by sending it back to you. Not just an authenticity and people who are honest and vulnerable and super loving and accepting and supportive of who you are, right? But of everything that you are meant to have as your most divine and authentic self, right? Creator sent you here to express yourself this way, and Creator also sent you here to receive as a result of that authenticity. So I'm talking about the job, the relationships, again, the money, the lifestyle, the I don't know, anything and everything that you can possibly think of, the body even, right? It is all part of that law of sympathetic resonance, that law of attraction. You attract who you are. You don't attract what you think about because you are not your mind, right? You don't attract necessarily in and of itself. You don't attract what you do, right? And we talked about this in the episode a couple of episodes ago, force versus flow, right? If you're trying to force something, you're doing it, you're trying to force it to happen, right? You still won't attract it because you are not your body, you are not your mind, right? And again, like even some things that you are working on in terms of your affirmations and your manifestations, you'll attract some of them because you'll attract whatever you believe you can have deep in your body. If your body feels like, yes, this is true for me, if your soul knows, yes, this is true for me, this is meant for me, then you will absolutely attract that. But as as soon as you feel yourself hit that wall, like, oh man, I really want to believe that I'm worthy of $10,000 months. Oh, I really want to believe that I'm worthy of an unconditional loving partnership and a husband. Oh, I really want to believe that I'm super worthy and deserving of a job that works, on my timetable, that makes me good money, where I'm not exhausted and running the rat race, where I can, kind of make my own schedule and have that freedom to still be with my kids and my dogs, et cetera, et cetera. You want to believe those things, but if you're just saying those things to yourself and you're not feeling them sink in, right? Then there's a joker sitting in your queen seat. You need to kick that motherfucker out, right? You need to do that work to peel back those layers to get at your authenticity and say, "Oh, wait a minute, actually this is who I am. Actually, this is part of my consciousness. This is part of my creation. This is part of how Creator made me. And so this is how I'm going to believe, and this is how I'm going to live my life from a place of that belief." Right? I feel like I just totally like I took notes and I like put them in front of me. I started channeling, and I didn't this is the first time I've done this in like a couple of months with this podcast. And I hope that all of that resonated with you so much. I hope that you can truly feel how much this means to me to share this with you and to share this with the world, and to help you create that version of yourself, to help you remember that version of yourself. And if it's something that you do desire to work on, to start that journey on, I absolutely invite you to click the link to my link tree in the show notes. There's a couple of different options for ways that we can work together in there. But truthfully, if there is a way that you desire to work with me and you don't see it as a current offering, please, 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 I absolutely invite you to send me an email or a message. You can now actually text me right through a link in the show notes of this podcast as well, and it will come up on my dashboard on my end of the podcast. So you can send a text that way, you can send an email, you can message me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, or whatever, and just let me know, what it is that you're struggling with and how you desire to work with me. I'm certain that there is always a way that we can figure something out, because in my heart of hearts, I do not believe that healing, authenticity, growth, elevation, manifestation, that to be able to live the life that you truly desire and to have the wealth in every area of life, I do not believe that that is a thing that is meant to be gatekept. Okay? If if my little 5 foot 100 pound self can have everything I desire and more, then so can you. If someone like me who has, if you listen to the last episode, you'll have at least some idea of some of the shit that I've been through, right? If I can now live this life, then so can you, right? And I deeply invite you to connect with me somehow, some way, so that together we can walk on your journey. This is not a hierarchy. This is not me telling you what to do. This is me giving you the tools that you need to remember who you are and to create the life from your remembering, from your knowing. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you so much for everything you do to invest in yourself and your growth and your love and your elevation and your authenticity. If you really loved this episode, I would love, love, love to get your review, your comments, if you would share it, if you would tell me about it. Tell me which parts of it maybe hit you the most. I love all of it. I love connecting with you all so much. This is my life's work. I absolutely love every part of it. And I can't wait to see you in the next one. If you haven't already, please do make sure that you subscribe to this podcast so that you'll get notified every time a new episode comes out. And the more you share it, the more that together we can raise the vibration and the consciousness of the universe. So, again, thank you so much for being here from wherever you are in time and space. I love you so much, and I hope that you love you so much as well. Remember, you are coded for more, and it's already within you. Your blessings, your prosperity, your wealth, your native growth. I'll see you next time. Mwah.